In February 2022, Nintendo announced that they planned to close the Wii U and 3DS eShops as of March 2023. To add further insult to injury, Nintendo have also said that, aside from the games included with Switch Online memberships, they have no intentions of making legacy content available via other means. Fret not though, because there's still time to act and get hold of those games you've been meaning to play for years. It's just that you're going to have to do it sooner rather than later. For this list, we're taking a look at the Wii U games you should definitely buy before the eShop closes down for good. These are games that may no longer be available once the eShop is gone, so you won't see the likes of Mario Kart 8 on this list, as you can still enjoy it on the Nintendo Switch. We'll be covering the 3DS games you should get your hands on before time runs out in a separate list, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. I'm Ben from TripleJump, and here are 10 video games you must buy before the Wii U eShop closes. Number 10. NES Remix and NES Remix 2. We're kicking this list off with two titles that each give you a whole bunch of games for the price of just one. Indeed, both NES Remix and NES Remix 2 can be purchased from the eShop for a very reasonable price and give players access to reimagined content from loads of NES titles. The first NES Remix allows players to experience multiple games in a new way, including Donkey Kong, a game which spawned not one, but two legends of video games in the form of the Kong himself and a little-known plumber named Jumpman. You probably know him as Mario. Not feeling like monkeying around? Then you can try your hand at mixed-up versions of Legend of Zelda, Super Mark Bros, Excite Bike, and many, many more. NES Remix 2 similarly features reworked content from the likes of Super Mario Bros. 2 and 3, Punch-Out, Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link, and many others. These are some of your favorite classic titles like you've never seen them before, and they may end up being completely lost once the eShop closes. Besides, where else can you get a dozen titles for less than the price of a takeaway pizza? Buy now, thank me later. Number 9. Sonic Lost World. It's fair to say that our pal Sonic the Hedgehog has had his ups and downs over the years, but although his 2013 Wii U venture isn't the best Sonic game ever to grace our consoles, it isn't half bad either. Sonic Lost World sees the titular blue hedgehog facing off against the Deadly Six. He's not alone though, as he's got his mate Tails at his side along with Dr. Eggman, who fans will know is usually not so fond of Sonic and his pals. Like its predecessor, Sonic Lost World's gameplay largely consists of platforming. However, the level design consists of both 2D side-scrolling and 3D environments. The controls may be slightly clunky in places, but the game's visuals and music are some of the best that the series has to offer, and as with most Sonic titles, the gameplay is an awful lot of fun. Sonic Lost World is also available on PC, but the PC port is missing some of the features of its Wii U sibling, namely the multiplayer mode, RC vehicles, and the circus minigame. So technically, there will still be a way to play Sonic Lost World once the eShop closes, but players won't be getting the full experience. Number 8. Metroid Prime Trilogy. What's this? Another title that's many games for the price of one? Why, we ought to call this list 10 eShop bargains you'd be a fool to miss out on. All jokes aside, the Metroid Prime Trilogy is another example of a Wii U title that it might be difficult to get hold of once the eShop closes. The collection packages together 3 games from the Metroid franchise: Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, and Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. All 3 Metroid Prime titles feature the legendary Samus Aran as their protagonist, and players join her as she battles the evil space pirates. Not only does she have them to contend with, but she must also face off against other hostile aliens and her doppelganger, Dark Samus. Ooh. All 3 games received critical acclaim at the time of their respective releases and are often cited amongst the best video games of all time. The original Metroid Prime in particular received praise for its detailed graphics, immersive atmosphere, and exploration-focused gameplay, garnering a score of 97 out of 100 on Metacritic. With that in mind, it's a shame that these games will soon become difficult to play, so it's probably best to snap them up before it's too late. Number 7. Sin and Punishment, Successor of the Skies. We're sticking with the sci-fi theme now, with Sin and Punishment, Successor of the Skies, or Sin and Punishment Star Successor if you want to get everywhere except Europe about this. A follow-up to 2000's Sin and Punishment, which for the record we also recommend, Sin and Punishment, Successor of the Skies is a rail shooter released in 2009. The game is set in a world where 2 universes exist, inner space and outer space. The plot follows a reconnaissance unit from outer space named Kachi and the inner space agent Issa, who has been sent attempt to destroy her. Whilst attempting to infiltrate the humans, however, Kachi uses her memory, and so when Issa deems her harmless, the leaders of Inner Space send the Nebulox after them. Critics fell in love with Successor of Disguise, praising it for just how much variety there is in the gameplay, which is especially impressive for a rails shooter. Not only this, but the story is well written and the combat is packed with action and rarely becomes dull. Successor of Disguise is admittedly a little on the short side, with the single-player campaign taking most players around 6 hours, but in our opinion it's far better to give players a fun-filled few hours than it is to bloat your runtime with utter nonsense. Number 6. Pandora's Tower. If you're looking for a Wii U title that's full of action, puzzles, and the threat of an evil curse, then we highly recommend picking up a copy of Pandora's Tower. The game follows Aaron and Elena as they flee the Illyrian army and attempt to find a cure for the curse that threatens to turn Elena into a frightful monster. The only way to do it is to feed her the flesh of the Masters, powerful beings that inhabit the 13 Towers. Depending on the actions the player takes and how strong Aaron's relationship with Elena becomes, they can achieve one of 6 different endings. The gameplay revolves around exploring the towers, with the objective being to reach the top of each by solving puzzles and fighting enemies. The whole thing is your classic boy meets girl love story, but with a fantastical twist, and anyone willing to give it a go will find likeable characters, a simple yet engaging plot, and decent voice acting, all set in a beautifully designed world. Originally released for the Wii in 2011, Pandora's Tower can now be found on the eShop, though as previously mentioned, it won't be there for much longer. You better grab it while you can. Number 5. Mother and Earthbound. Yes, we know it's 2 games in one entry again, but it's hard to recommend one without the other, so just roll with it, okay? Mother, or Earthbound Beginnings if you want to get less Japanese about this, was originally released all the way back in 1989 for the NES, but made its way to the Wii U in 2015. It tells the story of Ninten, a small boy who must use his great-grandfather's studies on psychic powers in order to overcome the strange paranormal occurrences taking place across the world. Earthbound tells a similarly strange tale, only this time the protagonist is a young chap named Ness, and he and his neighbour must collect melodies in an object called the Soundstone in order to stop the malevolent alien force known as the Gigas. Both Mother and Earthbound respectfully poke fun at RPG tropes, and by setting the game in modern times, the developers were, modern for the time, the developers were able to subvert player expectations of what an RPG should be. In February 2022, Nintendo did announce that both Mother and Earthbound would be made available via Switch Online. There are no guarantees as to how long they'll be there though, so it might be best to grab a copy of each from the eShop whilst you still have the opportunity. Number 4. Super Mario Advance Series. Ben, I hear you cry, you can't put an entire series of games under one entry, that's cheating, to which I say it's my list and I'll do what I want, so there. Super Mario Advance was originally released for, you guessed it, the Game Boy Advance, and features spruced up, Nintendo's words not mine, versions of Mario Bros. And Super Mario Bros. 2. The latter comes not only with improved graphics and sound, but also a bunch of new features like the enemy Roberto and the Yoshi Challenge. Super Mario Advance 2 is a re-release of Super Mario World, recreating each of its levels but with slightly toned down difficulty. Yoshi's Island got the advanced treatment in Super Mario Advance 3 and even includes a bonus level for each world with 100% completion. Last but certainly not least is Super Mario Advance 4, which features an enhanced remake of Super Mario Bros. 3, originally released for the NES in 1988. As a cheeky bonus, it also includes all of the e-reader levels from back in the good old days of the Game Boy Advance. Considering that each of these titles can be picked up on the eShop for about the price of a meal in your local fast food joint, we say it's worth foregoing that cheeseburger and having yourself some fun with Mario & Co. instead. Number 3. Yoshi's Woolly World. If there's one thing Nintendo knows, it's wholesome games, and if you discount the likes of Animal Crossing, there are few that are more wholesome than Yoshi's Woolly World. One day, while the Yarn Yoshis are just minding their own business and going about their daily routines, the scoundrel Maggie Cooper Kamek shows up and turns almost all of them into balls of wool, scattering them across multiple different worlds in the process. Only 2 Yoshis manage to avoid the fate, and it's up to them to rescue their pals and hunt down the evil Kamek. If you're looking for a game with a steep difficulty curve, then Yoshi's Woolly World is not it. With that said, just because a game is easy doesn't mean it's bad, and Yoshi's Woolly World has an awful lot to offer its players. Anyone that does decide to give it a go is going to find a bright, colourful platformer with a simple yet endearing story, an innovative art style, and inventive gameplay mechanics. As it stands, the only way to play Yoshi's Woolly World is on the Wii U or 3DS, so we'd highly advise picking up a copy if you don't want to miss out on all the plush action. Number 2. Xenoblade Chronicles X. If, prior to the release of 2015's Xenoblade Chronicles X, you'd have told us that the Wii U was capable of running a massive open-world RPG, we'd have laughed in your face, right in your stupid face, you big stupid.
What the hell was that?
It turns out, however, that our chortling would have been misplaced, as Xenoblade Chronicles X proved that the Wii U was capable of far more than just Mario Kart. Players are plunged into a stunning open world with a huge number of quests on which to embark. Following the Earth's destruction during an intergalactic war, humans are forced to venture into space and find a new planet to call home. It's not long before one of the colonies, the new Los Angeles, crashes on the planet Mirror, and it's up to the player character to protect the colony from hostile alien types and explore the planet to uncover its secrets. Critics praised the game for its graphics, its gameplay, its RPG elements, and for just how bloomin' huge it is. With the closure of the eShop looming, we highly recommend picking up a copy and giving it a go for yourself. It's so long that by the time you finish it, you might have forgotten how sad you are about all of the other Wii U games you'll never get to play. Number 1. Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Galaxy 2. Alright, we get it, there have been an awful lot of entries on this list that have been multiple titles bundled into one, but I swear, this is the last one of them, because this is the last entry. The first Super Mario Galaxy sees the titular plumber making his way from planet to planet in order to collect Power Stars, rescue Princess Peach, and save the universe from the dastardly Bowser. Upon its release, it received universal acclaim and is, at the time of writing, the 6th best rated game on aggregator site Metacritic ever. Super Mario Galaxy 2 sees the unfortunate princess imprisoned once again, and it's up to Mario to pursue Bowser into outer space, collecting Power Stars as he goes. It's unusual for a sequel to be as good as its predecessor, but Super Mario Galaxy 2 somehow managed it, bagging itself 7th place on Metacritic's greatest games of all time. Both games are colourful romps through wonderfully designed levels, and it breaks our hearts that there are some out there who may never get to play them. Super Mario Galaxy can be played on the Switch if you have a copy of Super Mario All-Stars, but sadly this was a limited time offering, so it's probably best to pick up Mario's Intergalactic Adventures on the Wii U shop while you can, for safety.